The story begins with a revelation, one that challenges everything we thought we knew about ourselves. For centuries, humanity has clung to a singular narrative of its origin. Simple, uniform, unquestionable. Yet, hidden in forbidden texts, buried in the shadows of history, lies a truth so profound, so disruptive, that it was erased from the records of time. There are three kinds of humans. This knowledge, suppressed and labeled as heresy, was preserved in fragments of ancient manuscripts. These texts, whispered in secret circles, speak of beings of light, untouched by earthly limitations. They describe a time before humanity as we know it, a time when existence was not bound by flesh, toil, or suffering. But not all humans remained beings of light. Something happened, something that fractured this luminous existence into three distinct types, dividing humanity into those who awaken, those who remain asleep, and something far more elusive. The forbidden book that dares to reveal this truth is not easy to find, and the knowledge it holds is not easy to bear. It speaks of an ancient conspiracy, a deliberate act to obscure humanity's true nature. It hints at the presence of an unseen force, an architect of illusions, bent on ensuring that we remain blind to the truth of who we really are. And so we are left with questions. Are you one of the awakened, carrying a fragment of the original light? Are you among the asleep, drifting through a carefully constructed dream? Or are you something else entirely? The world you know, the reality you trust, may be nothing more than a veil. This is the call to mystery, the first step toward peeling back the layers and confronting the truth, if you are brave enough to face it. Who are you in this story? The answer could change everything. In the beginning, there was no flesh. There were no bones to break, no hunger to endure, no pain to overcome. What existed instead was light, pure, unblemished, radiant. The first beings were not born of earth or molded from clay, as so many tales would have us believe. They emerged from divine essence, an extension of creation itself. These beings of light were not constrained by the physical world. They did not need to eat, sleep, or toil. Their existence was free, untethered, and entirely whole. Every movement, every thought, every flicker of their being resonated with the infinite wisdom of their origin. They were not creators. They were creation. Their connection to the divine was absolute. No rituals, no temples, no intermediaries were necessary. Their existence was worship itself, a seamless union between the created and the creator. To them, the concept of separation did not exist. They were part of the light, and the light was part of them. But perfection does not come without its dangers. The power of these beings was not just in their brilliance, but in their autonomy. They did not bow. They did not depend. They needed nothing. To some, this was a threat. A world governed by beings that required no guidance, no rulers, no systems, was a world beyond control. And so, the stories were hidden, rewritten, and erased. Those who would benefit from submission and hierarchy ensured the truth of the beings of light would fade from human memory. What remains are fragments in forbidden texts, writings dismissed as heresy or myth. Yet these scraps whisper of an existence we cannot quite grasp, a perfection we can no longer reach. But what happened to these luminous beings? Did they fade into the cosmos? Were they bound to this world, forced to take on form and limitation? Or could some still walk among us, their light dimmed but not extinguished? This is the story of their beginning, but it is not yet the story of their end. Perfection rarely lasts without challenge. The beings of light, free from physical limits, embodied a divine connection that needed no mediator. Their brilliance, their autonomy, their sheer existence threatened an order yet to be established. A system that would demand control, worship, and obedience. The fall began not with a war or rebellion, but with a fracture, a deliberate severing of their connection to the divine source. An entity, known in forbidden texts as the demiurge, sought to create a new reality. Unlike the pure, boundless light from which the first beings came, this new reality was finite, bound by rules, and governed by form. The demiurge wove a world of matter, dense and heavy, where time began to flow, where hunger gnawed, and where bodies became prisons. The luminous beings were drawn into this creation, forced to take on shapes that were foreign to their essence. Their radiance dimmed, cloaked in layers of flesh and bone, and for the first time, they felt the weight of existence. This new form brought limitations. They could no longer soar freely through the realms of light. Now they walked, bound to the earth, vulnerable to pain, and chained to mortality. What was once infinite had become fragile. The beings of light were no longer what they had been. But the fall was not just physical, it was spiritual. Cut off from their source, they forgot. They forgot their origins, their purpose, and their power. This amnesia was not accidental. It was part of the Demiurge's design, a way to ensure control. A being that knows its light cannot be caged. A being that forgets it is light becomes a servant. The fall created a new kind of humanity, one tethered to survival, to cycles of toil and death. Yet, even in their descent, traces of light remained, hidden deep within. These fragments became sparks, small, fleeting reminders of what they once were. The question lingers: was this fall a punishment, a lesson, or a theft? And more importantly, can the light ever return to its full brilliance? The world of matter was never meant to inspire awe or freedom. It was designed for one purpose: control. When the Demiurge fashioned this reality, it was not out of love or compassion. It was an act of power, a calculated plan to create beings that would serve, obey, and build a system that would perpetuate his dominion. These new humans, forged from earth and bound to its cycles, were functional by design. Unlike the beings of light, who radiated wisdom and autonomy, these earthly humans were limited. Their bodies were fragile, their minds easily influenced, and their spirits veiled in layers of ignorance. Where the luminous beings had once known only freedom, the humans of Earth were introduced to fear. Hunger, pain, and desire became their teachers. These were not mere consequences of existence but tools, a blueprint for control. A hungry being seeks food. A fearful being seeks safety. A longing soul searches endlessly for fulfillment. And in that endless search, the humans of Earth became distracted, tethered to a life of chasing what always seemed just out of reach. But this wasn't all. The Demiurge and his agents, the Archons, ensured that these humans would remain bound to their material existence. Systems were created, cycles of labor, hierarchies of power, and constructs of faith that promised salvation in exchange for obedience. The humans of Earth were taught to look outward for answers, to seek guidance from leaders, priests, and rulers who claimed to hold the keys to their salvation. In reality, these systems were chains. They kept humanity docile, compliant, and unaware of the faint spark of light that still lingered within them. The Archons thrived on this ignorance, feeding on the energy of beings too distracted by the material world to see the truth. And yet, the humans of Earth were not entirely without hope. Despite their engineered limitations, remnants of their divine origin endured. In fleeting moments of inspiration, acts of kindness, and unexplainable bursts of creativity, the spark of light within them would flicker, defying the Demiurge's design. This flicker was enough to keep the story alive, enough to remind some that they were more than the sum of their fears and desires, enough to ask the question that even the Demiurge could not silence. What if there is more to us than this? Not all humans fit the mold. While many accepted the weight of the world, following the cycles of labor, survival, and control, there were others who burned brighter. These were the born of fire, beings who carried within them a force that refused to conform, a spark that could not be extinguished. The born of fire were different from the luminous beings of old. They were not purely spiritual, nor were they fully tied to the earth. They existed in the space between, a fusion of light and matter, but with something more, a raw, untamed energy that defied the rules of this world. They were not content to obey, to follow, or to be molded. Instead, they questioned, challenged, and broke apart the systems around them. This fire was both a gift and a curse. It gave them the strength to rise above their limitations, to see through the illusions crafted by the Demiurge and his Archons. But it also marked them as dangerous. Those in power, whether rulers, priests, or unseen forces, feared them. A human with fire was unpredictable, uncontrollable. Throughout history, the born of fire were the disruptors. They were the ones who rebelled against oppression, who tore down structures built on lies, and who created something new from the ashes. They were leaders of revolutions, visionaries of art and science, and wanderers who sought truths others dared not seek. But this path was never easy. The fire within them was not a gentle glow but a raging force. It could inspire creation, but it could also bring destruction. Many of the born of fire struggled to harness their energy. Some were consumed by it, leaving trails of chaos in their wake. Others learned to wield it with purpose, becoming beacons for those who had forgotten their own sparks of light. To the archons, the born of fire were a threat. These rebels had the potential to awaken others, to reignite the divine essence buried in humanity. And so, systems were designed to suppress them, to label them as dangerous or outcasts. Yet, despite the resistance, the fire never fully went out. The born of fire remind humanity of its dual nature, the capacity for destruction and creation, chaos and order. They challenge the world to evolve, to break free from the chains of control, and to embrace the unpredictable force of transformation. The question remains, is the fire within them the key to liberation, or a spark that will consume everything in its path? There is a prison, but it has no walls. There are chains, but they cannot be seen. This is the game of control, a system so pervasive that most never realize they are caught within it. The architects of this prison, the demiurge and his archons, crafted it with meticulous precision, ensuring that humanity would remain bound, not by force, but by belief. It begins with the senses. The world humanity knows is one of limitations, what can be touched, seen, heard, and measured. This reality, though seemingly infinite, is a construct designed to keep attention fixed outward. The systems of the world, governments, religions, economies, are layered upon this construct, creating an intricate web of distractions and dependencies. Fear is the foundation of the prison. The fear of loss, the fear of death, the fear of the unknown. These fears are woven into the fabric of existence, ensuring that most will cling to what is familiar, even if it enslaves them. The promise of safety, salvation, or success keeps humanity running in endless circles, chasing illusions that were never meant to be caught. Desire is the next layer. From birth, humans are taught to want possessions, power, approval. These desires are not accidents. They are tools. A being consumed by want is a being easily led. The systems of control offer countless ways to satisfy these cravings, but always with a cost, always with another chain. And then there is the illusion of choice. Humanity believes it is free because it can choose between this or that, one leader or another, one belief system or its rival. But these choices are confined within the boundaries of the construct. True freedom, freedom to see beyond the prison, requires stepping outside of the game entirely, a step most are too afraid or too distracted to take. Yet not all remain blind to the prison. The born of fire, the awakened, and even some who slumber have moments of clarity, glimpses of the truth. These moments are dangerous to the system. When someone begins to see the chains, the archons act swiftly. Doubt is sown, distractions are amplified, and those who question are often labeled as outcasts or threats. The most insidious aspect of this prison is its invisibility. It exists not just in the external world but within the mind. Thoughts, beliefs, and perceptions are molded by the construct, creating a reality that feels inescapable. But escape is possible. The first step is recognizing the game for what it is, a system designed not to empower but to control. The question is not whether the prison exists. The question is, will you see it? The truth has never been easy to bury. Even when forbidden, even when burned, it leaves traces, whispers in the dark, fragments hidden in the corners of history. These forbidden texts, relics of forgotten wisdom, contain the keys to a story long suppressed. They speak of humanity's origin, its divine potential, and the forces determined to keep that knowledge buried. The Gospel of Philip is one such fragment. Branded heretical and cast out by early religious authorities, it offers a vision of humanity not as creatures molded from the dust, but as beings of light, emanations of divine wisdom. It speaks of a connection to the Creator that bypasses rituals and intermediaries, a truth too dangerous for those who sought to establish power over the spiritual lives of others. The Book of Enoch is another. Hidden for centuries and rediscovered only in fragments, it tells of watchers, celestial beings who descended to Earth and shared forbidden knowledge with humanity. The stories within are unsettling, blurring the lines between angels, gods, and manipulators. It hints at an ancient war over the soul of humanity, with knowledge as the ultimate weapon. But these are not the only voices. Across cultures and continents, other texts echo similar themes. The Gnostic scriptures from Nag Hammadi, uncovered in 1945, contain teachings that defy the dominant narratives of religion and power. They speak of the demiurge, a jealous creator who imprisoned divine sparks in a world of flesh and matter. They describe a path to awakening, one that requires seeing beyond the illusions of this world. What unites these texts is not just their content but their fate. Each was declared dangerous, heretical, or unworthy. They were censored, their keepers persecuted, their wisdom scattered, and yet they survived. Pieces of them remain, preserved in hidden archives, passed down in secret, or rediscovered by those brave enough to question the official story. The survival of these texts raises questions. What is it about their message that inspires such fear? What truths do they hold that power cannot tolerate? The fragments speak of freedom, not just from the systems of the world but from the illusions of the mind. They remind humanity that its origins are not in the dust, but in the stars. But the fragments alone are not enough. To piece together the truth, one must read between the lines, listen to the echoes, and be willing to challenge the boundaries of belief. The pieces are scattered, but they wait for those ready to uncover them. The question is not whether the truth exists. The question is, will you seek it? Awakening is not a sudden burst of light. It is a process, a gradual shedding of illusions, a peeling away of the layers that have concealed the truth for so long. For those who begin to awaken, it starts as a quiet discomfort, a sense that the world is not as it seems. This is the first spark, the faint echo of a long-forgotten essence calling out from within. The lost essence, buried deep beneath layers of fear, desire, and conformity, is not truly gone. It is dormant, waiting for those brave enough to search for it. This essence is the remnant of the divine spark, the light that once made humanity limitless. It carries with it a memory of freedom, a connection to something far greater than the physical world. Awakening begins with questioning. Why are things the way they are? Why do the systems that govern life seem designed to distract, suppress, and divide? For the awakened, these questions are not fleeting curiosities. They are the first steps toward breaking the chains of the invisible prison. The process is not without resistance. Awakening threatens the balance of control, and the forces that benefit from humanity's slumber will do everything to maintain the status quo. The archons, those unseen manipulators, work tirelessly to keep the spark buried. They sow doubt, amplify fear, and use the machinery of society to keep the mind trapped. But for those who persist, the spark grows. The fragments of truth left behind in forbidden texts and silenced voices begin to make sense. Patterns emerge, connections form. The awakened start to see the world for what it is, not as an immutable reality, but as a construct, a veil obscuring something far greater. Reconnecting with the lost essence is not about rejecting the material world, but about transcending it. It is about understanding that the body is a vessel, the mind a tool, and the true self something infinite. As the spark of light grows, it illuminates not only the path forward but the truth of what has always been. For those who awaken, life does not become easier. If anything, it becomes more complex. Awareness brings responsibility. The responsibility to confront the illusions, to seek deeper truths, and to help others find their way. The awakened cannot return to sleep, for once the light is seen, it cannot be unseen. The question is not whether the spark exists within you. The question is, will you answer its call? The story humanity had always known was one of division. Spirit separated from matter, creator distant from creation, humanity disconnected from its essence. For millennia, this narrative shaped existence, fostering cycles of struggle, submission, and survival. But now, a new story was emerging, one that sought to bridge the divide and reunite humanity with the divine. This new story was not written in books or carved into stone. It was etched into the hearts of those who dared to awaken. It began with a profound realization. The divine had never left. The light that once defined humanity, that pure and boundless essence, had been buried but never destroyed. It had waited, through ages of silence, for the moment it would be remembered. The awakening spread like ripples in still water. As individuals reclaimed their inner light, they began to rewrite the narrative of what it meant to be human. No longer were they helpless beings molded from dust, living under the shadow of a jealous creator. They were luminous, creative, infinite fragments of the divine woven into the tapestry of existence. This reunion with the divine was not a return to the past. It was a transformation, a step forward into something new. Humanity began to see itself not as subjects in a constructed reality, but as co-creators of the universe. The boundaries between the material and the spiritual blurred, revealing a world where both could exist in harmony. The systems of control that had once thrived on ignorance began to crumble. People no longer looked outward for salvation. They turned inward, finding the answers that had always been within. Leaders and institutions that relied on fear and division lost their grip, as the awakened recognized their own power. The journey was not without challenges. Reclaiming the divine spark meant facing the shadows, the fears, doubts, and wounds carried through generations. But with each step, humanity grew stronger, more connected, more whole. What once felt like a fractured existence now became a unified dance of light and matter, chaos and order, creation and destruction. In this new story, humanity was not alone. The beings of light, the born of fire, and the humans of Earth all found their place, each contributing their unique essence to a greater whole. Together, they formed a collective that was greater than the sum of its parts, a reflection of the infinite divine from which they came. The question was no longer about origins or control. It was about potential. What could humanity become when it remembered its true nature? The story ends not with a conclusion, but with a beginning. Humanity, reunited with the divine, steps into a new chapter, one written not by the demiurge or the archons, but by the awakened themselves. The spark, once buried, now burns brighter than ever.